In the heart of central South Africa stands a university focused on possibility, progress, and purpose. A place where knowledge evolves, ideas grow, and futures take shape. This is the University of the Free State. For 121 years, the UFS has advanced learning across 3 distinctive campuses, bringing together students from diverse backgrounds to form one connected, future-focused academic community. We are an innovative, research-led, student-centered, and regionally engaged university. Guided by our vision of responsible societal futures, we use our knowledge and partnerships to support progress and impact across our region, continent, and world. Across 7 faculties, our programs are shaped by expert academics committed to real-world relevance and meaningful impact. We train educators, health professionals, legal thinkers, creatives, scientists, business leaders, and theologians who drive change in their fields. Students learn from leading researchers and emerging scholars, working within networks that stretch across Africa and beyond. They step into a university that collaborates with global partners while remaining grounded in its responsibility to society. Our values shape how we teach, work, and engage. Excellence, care, accountability, impact, social justice, sustainability. These principles guide our commitment to student success, ensure a supportive and safe learning environment, and inspire a culture that embraces growth and forward-looking thinking. From advanced research facilities to community partnerships, from blended learning innovation to campus sustainability, the UFS continually evolves to meet the needs of a changing world. The UFS cultivates graduates and knowledge that create impact locally and globally. We are a forward-looking institution where fresh ideas grow, where diverse perspectives spark new insight, and where tomorrow's leaders are prepared today. Globally connected, regionally engaged, purpose-driven toward responsible societal futures. This is the University of the Free State.
No wonder you have white hair.
Real. Start. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, members of university leadership, and everyone joining us via live stream. My name is Kwezi Madlala, and it is truly an honor to welcome you today to the Africa Day edition of the EDSA Dialogue here at the University of the Free State. Today's dialogue is held under the theme, Expanding Pathways to Student Wellbeing. And as we commemorate Africa Day today, this gathering creates space not only for important conversations around student well-being, but also for the celebration of our African identity. Before we begin the formal program, we'll first enjoy a cultural opening item from the Bavenda Association. absolutely passionate, beautiful, energetic. We really have talent at UFS. Ladies and gentlemen, let's give them another round of applause. It is now my honor to invite the Executive Director of Students Affairs, Sports, Arts and Culture, Dr. Hlasho, to deliver the welcoming and opening remarks. Please give a round of applause.
Good evening. Good afternoon. Good evening. Let me take this opportunity to really welcome you all. But before I do that, I'm so excited. That was very inspiring. I'm not going to follow or introduce any other person. I'll take it, the protocol has been observed by the program director. The only person I'm going to recognize is my boss, Professor Hester Klopper, who is in the audience. You guys next time. Colleagues, please do enjoy yourselves. We organize this event solely for yourselves. I mean, the CEO of this university is amongst yourselves to share his vision, to share his strategy, to tell you stories that will be exciting. You are privileged to have a Vice Chancellor of her caliber. Let's give Prof. Klopper a round of applause. You are all most welcomed, and please, during the sessions, panel discussions, please do engage with the panelists. Do take note of what the Vice Chancellor is going to deliver as a guest. Please do take note. Take your notepad, take your pen, and make notes, because you are not going to ask VC any question. The panelist will actually probe you to ask questions from them. Listen carefully, engage, and benefit from the interaction with the panelists that are with us. We have a well-known person called Gogo Van Zee, who's going to be actually be part of the panelists. We also have Professor Deliwe, who is also going to be part of the panelists. She's the Dean at Health Sciences. Colleagues, the richness is amongst yourselves. You are in the company of richness, starting with the Vice Chancellor and the Dean of Health Sciences, and our external guest, Gogo. Enjoy the rest of the sessions. You are most welcome. This is your home. In my culture, I would say, khululani zihlangu kusekhaya lapha. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Hlasho, for those reflections. It is now my great privilege to invite the Vice Chancellor and Principal of the University of the Free State, Professor Klopper, to also come to the stage to deliver the keynote address. Thank you.
Good. Well, good evening. Sangbonani, Dumela. Wonderful to be here amongst you. And our program director, you look absolutely beautiful. Beautiful. Wow. What? Absolutely. So it seems like there's some competition for me. One thing in our household that we totally do not agree between husband and wife, and this is, I am, and my husband is. So this morning I woke up, woo! So I do want to apologize. I do want to apologize to those that have been supporting. So it's very seldom that I get something to win my husband on, and this time I feel I've got the upper hand. But let's get to the business of the day, and this is celebrating Africa Day. It is indeed an honor to welcome all of you as we recognize this day, and this has become quite a prominent day on our calendar every year. And this year in particularly, the theme that speaks to this day, and I want to acknowledge my colleagues who have chosen this, that speaks of a promise, but also of a challenge that lies ahead of us, and that is leaving no student behind. Towards inclusive pathways of student well-being. And I will make some comments about that, but I also know our panelists will speak in particularly to that theme. So last week at our Kwakwa campus, we had the Center for Gender and Africa Studies that had one of our international authorities on Africa history, gender and power and memory, Professor Nwanda Atlebe. I never get it right, but I'm trying, you see, as part of our celebration of the Africa Day celebration. And in particular, she shared insights under this theme, and she spoke about gender as Africa's archives, but giving recognition of the challenges that we continue to experience in gender parity towards power, authority, and how that plays into our celebration of Africa Day. But before I move on, recognizing Africa Day and what this means for us as a university, I want to touch briefly on three aspects. Who we are as the University of the Free State, what we believe African universities can offer the world, and then why expanding pathways to student well-being cannot be a peripheral concern, but is the center of our purpose. So let me kick off with Africa Day and why we commemorate this day. And it really marks the founding, as we know, the Organization of Africa Unity in 1963. And I don't want to give age away, but there's some of the leaders that celebrates exactly the same birth year as 63. But that's a moment when Africa leaders dared to imagine a continent. Let me repeat this. They dared to believe that there could be a continent united by shared purpose, rather than divided by colonial borders. And I need to pause for one moment and recognize the challenges that we face right here in our city in terms of still uniting ourselves behind an imagination of a continent that's united. That specific act required of people who could think beyond the present and who could have a bold vision. And this is exactly the vision that universities continue to share. We exist not for the here and the now and today only, but it is about a long-term, thinkable, and cultivating minds that can carry both the weight of history, but also you carry the possibility of the future. So, I want to be direct. The future is not only reachable if the students we are entrusted with cannot get there. I recognize that tonight for our students here, that we must ask ourselves a hard question of how do we continue to remove the barriers that stand between our students and their full potential in the life of this institution, but also in the life of our continent. So leaving no student behind is definitely not just a slogan. It is a structural commitment that the university has made. And it asks of us not only to look at those who are thriving, but those who can achieve their potential. So if I move from Africa Day and move into the University of the Free State as a proud African university, at its core, we are an African university. And more so, we sit right here in the heart of South Africa geographically. So we draw our students and our scholars from across the continent. And I hope that this university will continue to foster the diversity of our continent. Our research, be it food security, indigenous medicine, climate resilience, cancer treatment, all of it, if you look across the work that we do, is rooted in our African realities. And our 3 campuses are a living reflection of our continent's diversity. Different languages, different histories, different ways of knowing, all in conversation with one another. But it's this diversity that also brings real complexity. The student who arrives from a rural household, carrying the hope of an entire family, entire communities on their shoulders, faces a very different set of challenges from a student who arrives here as a well-rounded or from a well-rounded urban background. Yet, as a university, we realize that both are equally deserving of success. And that is the challenge of us. Different pathways, but anyone who walks onto the land of this university is deserving of success. It reminds me of the Cameroonian philosopher Achille Mbembe, who writes that Africa should be understood as a place that has its own time, rhythm, and future. He also reminds us it might well be that the future of our planet will play out in Africa. And how true has that become? There are some parts in the northern hemisphere that is not realized as yet, that the future of this planet is in the hands of Africa. And that potential, the University of the Free State is latching on. So we are definitely not trying to imitate what's happening in the Northern Hemisphere universities. We are working towards becoming the best version of ourselves, grounded in this place, shaped by the continent, but open to the world and to learn from them. And central to our vision here at the University of the Free State is that our student body needs to be supported to the best that we genuinely can do, so that they are genuinely free to learn. So what does it then mean if we talk about expanding pathways to student well-being? Let me speak directly to this theme. Student well-being is not a wellness program. It is not a counseling hotline. It is not a motivational poster that we would see somewhere in the corridors of our university. Student well-being is real, inclusive well-being. And that makes learning possible. It implies for me that is what enables our students to walk into a lecture hall and not just be physically present, but mentally, emotionally being able to engage. And you can only do that if you experience wellness, because that allows you to ask the questions, to engage with ideas, and to imagine a future. I need to, however, share with you that since I've joined the university, I've extensively engaged with alumni, both in our country, but also in other parts of the continent. And I want to give you hope that it's absolutely unbelievable if I meet these alumni from the University of the Free State to see what they have accomplished. And it's in your hands also to take that responsibility and opportunity to grasp that. But critical where we find ourselves, just given that recently NSFAS has been put under administration for the third time in 5 years, I want to recognize tonight that I know you are carrying financial anxiety. And I know that it will affect your ability to sleep, to concentrate, and to remain enrolled. I know that it will affect your mental health. That acknowledged, also given that so many of our students are first-generation university students navigating a world that was never designed for them, yet they find here at the university ways of how to engage, mentors, but sometimes the challenge for us to provide enough of those resources. So, given my recognition of the challenges that you find yourselves in across the university, our students, in terms of financial debt, I want to recognize again tonight that myself and the university management has made a commitment that we will do anything possible to make sure that students who are academically deserving will remain in the system. Can I repeat that? Students who are academically deserving, we will do anything possible to make it possible for those students to remain in the system. To that effect, so we know this heavy burden that hangs over our university, and it's the only university in this country who has the provisional registration. So I want to acknowledge that it is a concern for students. But let me give you what has just happened in the last couple of weeks. So when we've been tracking all along, what is the number of those students that are within the risk area? We have been able, through donations, through work, through bursaries, etc., to get that number from almost 2,300 and it's down to 1,700. We have dropped the burden from 50 million to, as I speak, 40,449,000. So I hope you hear my commitment, and I'm bringing the commitment of the management of this university, that we are committed to work with you and the ISRC to make sure that we continue. So let me please ask, study hard, make sure you pass, at least do your part in terms of academically deserving. And from our side, we will do what we can to remain you in the system. So if we then talk about expanding pathways, it means building financial support systems that are accessible, dignified, and responsive. And let me pause for one moment and acknowledge our ISRC, was just Saturday organized a fun run. And also I know at the South Campus they've had a full drive of people asking people to contribute. I want to acknowledge the ISRC and other student leaders for the leadership role you've taken to work with us on this. And I'm pleased to announce, right from the beginning, in the VC ISRC Legacy Fund, I made the commitment, if those money comes in, I will match it. And I can confirm every cent that the ISRC has gained through either the fund run or the money contribution at the South Campus, I'm matching rand for rand. I can also share with you that we've been successful to get an additional 20 million through one of the CETAs. There's criteria for the bursaries, but we've already looked that quite a number of the provisional registered students will meet some of those criteria. The bottom line is, you need to keep on passing. You need to study. And we are doing what we can to keep you in the system. Wellness also means that we are treating the mental health infrastructure seriously, and that we don't just see it as laboratory equipment. And we are continuously investing in making sure that those services are available. Equally, it means that we continue to invest in our academic support systems that are proactive and not reactive. And I want to invite you, it's as easy as ask for help. Please, don't sit and worry about your academics and say, where am I going to get the help? Our Center for Teaching and Learning is waiting for you. Reach out and get that support. And then lastly, but not the least, is wellness for me also means that we are designing our curriculums and our spaces, our services, everything that we offer with our student in mind. And therefore also genuinely listening to our students is critical. We often refer to Ubuntu, that binds us together, that teaches us a person is a person through other people. I honestly believe a student is a student through how the institution supports them in the totality of wellness. But you've also heard the flip coin of what I'm trying to say tonight, and that is, please take the responsibility also for your wellness, in terms of your academic progress, in terms of looking at your mental health, in terms of seeking the support for your academics if needed. But I want to press a bit on what might be a sore point. And that is, just recently, we've seen a report, a national report, on the gambling behavior of students. It's a huge concern. Dear students, gambling, drinking, it's the same, it is the same, but I'm talking of alcoholism. I'm not talking amongst you. I'm talking of the pattern. Once it gets hold of you, very hard to then escape. So what I'm saying is, please take responsibility and steer away from behaviors of drinking too much. I've seen the results of that. And I'm asking you, please, don't fall into the habit of gambling. Let me move on. Almost done. So what does the potential of African higher education institutions offer, and where is our position in the global higher education space? I want to say something about the role of our African universities, because I honestly believe that we are underestimated in this conversation globally. There's a long-standing assumption of global academia that knowledge flows one direction. And I've always seen that it's almost anticipated that it comes from the north to the south. And that the so-called center is to the periphery. But let me assure you, that assumption is totally wrong. And more so, if we look at our African university and what they are producing, we see the urgency, we see the original scholarship, and we see research and teaching and learning that speaks exactly to the challenges we see on our continent. Therefore, the impact of climate change, biodiversity loss, food systems, pandemic preparedness, the urban informality, and our democratic governance remains under pressure, but it's in our hands as universities here on the continent of Africa to address them. The Kenyan scholar, Professor Ali Mazrui, wrote, he says, Africa is the most central of all continents, geographically, evolutionary, and in terms of the challenges that define the human future. And I believe that centrality extends to the universities of this continent. And we will continue to see how universities of this continent will shape the future. So let me move to conclusion. If we think of the Africa Union Agenda of 2063, it envisages a continent that is prosperous, peaceful, and integrated, one that harnesses the talent and the energy of its young people to be a full participant in the global knowledge ecosystem. And our university and universities across the continent is central to that call. The skills that Africa needs, the skills that our country needs, is critical thinking, innovation, ethical leadership, gender equity, scientific capacity, democratic citizenships. And I want to pause and ask, let's take hands, everyone at this university, to exactly make sure that that's the students we will produce. We must be honest, pressures are a lot, not ignoring that, but none of those challenges are insurmountable. They require us to think resourcefully and with a deep commitment. In closing, Africa Day is an act of remembering. But more than that, it's an act of recommitment. So once again, I want to reiterate my recommitment and that of the executive management to make sure that no deserving student will be left behind. It asks of us to tell the story of our continent and to know that this continent's story is far from over. The best chapters lies ahead, and it's in your hands to help us write those chapters. Long after we are gone, you will have the opportunity to continue to write those stories. And I also invite you, as you think of your future careers, also think of the academe as a career, as a place where you can contribute knowledge, inquiry, courageous thinking. I want to leave with the words of the great Senegalese scholar and statesman, Dr. Cheikh Anta Diop, who dedicated his life to restoring Africa's intellectual heritage and confidence. And let me quote, "The most crucial thing is the renaissance of the African world. The Africa of today must create in all domains, not only in art, but in philosophy, science, and technology." My call to each and everyone here tonight is a call, let's go create. Let's take intellectual courage, confident scholarship, and let's make this call a reality for all of us, because we are all Africans. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Prof, for those encouraging words. Truly, truly touching. And at this time, I'd like to call upon the Xhosa Students Association to perform for us.
busuku elixesha madoda lifuzisela ukufa siyafa izityalo nemveli zife zonke zizale ngokutsha iyafa ingqondo nokwenza kwisambi ingqondo zochitha kwingqondi zomzinyaphalo siyacamagusa kuwe ngamantakataye siyacamagusa kuwe nawantlandolo siyakuthandaza siyakulongoza sithi malibe lihlekiswe likabhalo liqale phambili phaya umhlingo mazibethwa ngenduku ukwedlula inani labafazi namadoda
Siyabulela kakhulu to the Xhosa Students Association. Siyabulela. That was absolutely amazing. Thank you so much. At this time, I'd like to call upon Mr. Paula Mbalane as we facilitate the rest of the session together. Mr. Paula, please give him a round of applause.
Yes. Yazi ukuthi ndizichaze ndithi mna ndingubhungane umthi mkhulu nasele uthole lesilo rhadebe bathi umkhulu Thixo kodwa ungangabhungane. Let me invite Dr. Christie and Prof to join us on stage for this segment of the session. Please.
Okay, is it on?
To the other side. Dr. Christie, I need you. Yes. Yes. You know, as Prof was complimenting Kwezi as you were starting the show, and I thought of your name, whether we actually do know what your name actually means. Because the name Kwezi means a morning star. So Prof had no other choice but to compliment the morning star. Thank you for such a fantastic job that you did.
Thank you so much. You're most welcome.
And as we move to this segment of the session, it's a very interesting segment of the conversation because we are linking well-being, but in such a way that speaks to Africa Day. And we have a few panelists, just two panelists with us. Gogo, you are welcome. Prof, you are welcome. But I'm going to ask you, Kwezi, to introduce who we have on your side.
Yes, at this time I'd like to introduce Prof. Petlu. Professor Petlu, Professor Deliwe Renee Petlu is a distinguished leader in nursing scholarship and research capacity development with over 2 decades of experience in higher education and public health. Currently the Dean of the Faculty of Health Sciences at the University of the Free State. She has driven significant research growth while mentoring emerging scholars, having supervised postgraduate students to completion, including 17 PhD graduates. Her expertise in grant acquisition is evidenced by securing major funding from prestigious institutions such as the National Institutes of Health, National Research Foundation, partner training. As principal and co-investigator on numerous projects, she has sourced millions in research funding while fostering the next generation of researchers. A visionary strategist, Professor Petlu has built sustainable research partnerships across Africa and globally with institutions including Johns Hopkins University, Tanzania's Institute of Medical Research, and the University of Health and Allied Sciences in Ghana. Her leadership extends to ministerial appointments as Vice Chairperson of the South African Nursing Council, NRF Reviewer, President of Sigma's Africa Chapter, Journal Co-Editor, and Plenary Speaker worldwide. Professor Petlu brings unparalleled insights into building research cultures and navigating the competitive grants landscape. Professor Petlu.
Thank you, Kwezi. And on my side, ndiphethe ugogo, Dr. Christe van Zyl Gogo Bazamile. She is a licensed traditional health practitioner, scholar of African medicine, and social innovation consultant. She has been piloting the University of Cape Town's Indigenous Healthcare Advisory Service, spearheading the development of an indigenous wellness offering within the transformation portfolio of UCT. Ugogo Bazamile offers psycho-spiritual counseling and guidance for students with ancestral callings, spiritual gifts, and personal cultural challenges. She's also a current founding interim national executive committee member of the Traditional Health Practice Association of Southern Africa. Gogo, Tamago. And maybe, just maybe out of curiosity, let's start there. What does ukucamagusha mean and why is it so important?
Ndaqala ngicamagushise ke nami. Ngithi ke ethokozani emakhosini thobela lese dikhanya. Ngiyacabanga ukuthi sengiwabingelele onke amadlozi manje. That was me greeting everybody in the languages of the ancestors that are present in this room. Goeienaand as well, and good evening. Ukucamagushisa khehla lam. Ngokanye noma ngichaze ngesixhosa okanye ngesingisi. I must mix my languages.
Please mix. Let's mix.
I must mix my languages, right?
You know the trick that Nguni people use. They say isiXhosa okanye isiSotho asitologwe. isiXhosa sitoligwa, which means you do not translate Xhosa or you do not translate Sesotho. But in this case, I'm going to use that trick against you and test your ability to translate ukucamagusha.
I'm going to interpret it.
Yes.
Not translate
Okay.
it. Ukucamagusha, it's the same when you say Makosi or Togoza, it is an acknowledgement of you and the spiritual entourage that you walk with. Because all of us, as African descendants, as descendants of the globe, walk with ancestors. So I am honoring you, I am greeting you, as well as the historical lineage that you come from.
Thank you. As you've heard, ndinguKhehla mna. I'm now Khehla. Yes.
And Prof, it's very lovely to have you here. Siyabonga kakhulu. As someone who is in the health sciences and you have extensive experience in clinical practice, private healthcare, and academia, what are some of the emerging pathways in the field towards expanding well-being, particularly student well-being in higher education?
Thank you. When you started this conversation during some times back, when we started to think about how we are going to address this, one of the things that I first asked, what does well-being mean? And how do we define well-being within the diameters and parameters of an African person? And for one to start thinking of the pathways, one needs to start thinking of what do we mean, who we are. I'm making this example in particular to say, well-being is not a misnomer where you have disease. But well-being is where there is the ability to have meaning in your life, which could be from physical to spiritual, and that encompasses what makes well-being. Within an African concept, I always say, when we think well-being, we're not only thinking about individuals, we think about you as a person within a community. And therefore, once you start thinking of what the pathways could be in a higher education, which is mainly engraved in Western traditions in most cases, one needs to stop, take a pause and say, what does that mean? How would it look like? What is the shape of pathways? So one of the things that one would think of when you think about pathways in how we talk about well-being is we're talking about identity. And within higher education, this is something that we need to recognize, that we are looking into diversity. You could see the dancers, different ways of doing things. So when you build in your pathways, or we always talk about counseling, but is counseling enough? Or are we thinking of looking into the totality of a student and say, what makes this person well? Is the identity well? Is the comfort in terms of where they want to reach their career well? So there's kind of like levels in terms of how one would look into these pathways. And I think I had noted a couple, but I think as we continue the conversation, I will touch on it. But I think it was important to set the tone to say, well-being is to a person what a person is. It is about you being emotionally okay. It is about being able to identify yourself with who you are, not how you are defined by others. And it is about the linguistics that makes you and strengthen your mental health. So one looks into those things, and as higher education, we start to unpack them, to say how do we ensure that we include them for all the students that we deal with.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Very insightful. So it's how we self-actualize, in essence.
Yes, I don't want to use the word self-actualization because it can be interpreted the way, it is the Maslow's theory of needs. And we're not going to go to the Maslow's theory of needs on Africa Day.
Yes.
We're going to be thinking more of what is our identity?
Yeah.
Who are you? And as higher education, as senior people in higher education and lecturers in higher education, that orientation of understanding that when one is well, it's not how I assume, it's quite a subjective thing. It's when we say a student is well, what does that really mean? Did we really capture their cultures, their traditions? Do we want to play it as in the normal way of doing things. An example, you know, in the Western culture, when respect is defined by looking to somebody you talk to in the eye. But in my African culture, you bow, right? You don't look an elder in the eye. Now, if in education we don't recognize those differences, what happens is that when a lecturer speaks with a student and the student looks down, it becomes misinterpreted. So those pathways of inclusivity, whereas within the higher education space, we need to think of those to say, for this person, if I start shouting at this child, I'm confusing this person. And confusion comes with anxiety. Anxiety comes with fear. Fear comes with the inability to express themselves within a classroom. And therefore, we are leaving them behind. Then we say this student is not very clever or is not attentive. It is because we never understood the nuances of who the student is and what is represented within her learning or way of looking at education.
So we're looking at the intersectionality and all the social identity markers that make this person.
Definitely.
Thank you so much. Very insightful.
So the conversation is moving. Gogo, you are saying when I greet you, I also recognize the lineage, not only just you. And Prof is coming in, you are speaking about the holistic well-being, and one would have expected that maybe you will describe well-being in clinical terms only. And this is what triggers my question. What conversations have we not been having about well-being in the African continent, especially when you look at the clinical versus the African spirituality? What conversations are missing as you navigate higher education? Maybe I'll start with you, Gogo, because of the work that you've done in other institutions as well.
It's such an interesting question because one of the most fundamental things I used to say when I was doing talks was, if you are leaving an aspect of a student at the door, you might as well leave the entire student at the door. And there are histories and there are spiritual implications on our lives as African descendants that we don't speak about. We speak about them in decolonial spaces or in academic spaces. We'll speak about the trauma of the Witchcraft Act of 1957. We'll speak about a land disposition, and we would never speak about what does that connection to the land mean for me, and what has the Witchcraft Act of 1957 done to the nervous system of a Black African descendant. Our parents, our grandparents, our great-grandparents faced that injustice with whippings, fines, and death, which means fundamentally our nervous systems as African descendants, and especially people of color, are continuously responding to the fear of our own identity. And in the struggle of realizing that we are in the fear of our own identity, it literally means that the first person that is going to, like Prof was saying earlier to me, the first person that's going to judge me about needing to burn Impepo is my person of color. And not because they do not understand the prevalence of Impepo, but there is a predisposition towards classification and status that removes us from our Africanness, that needs us to act in certain ways, because for us to be able to enter certain institutions, we need to present and mask, right? We've been masking since the days of slavery. We still live with that reality within our nervous systems. When we step into certain spaces of higher education, that history, that colonial oppressive history, sits in our spiritual memory. So we are spiritually activated by the colonial histories that are part and parcel of the institutions that we are in. So when we look at the clinical aspect and the African spiritual aspect, is African spirituality has legacies of cleansing umkhokha, cleansing death, violence, cleansing very painful and traumatic incidences, right? And in the clinical setting, it's a difficult thing to introduce, because I'm trying to say to you that the reason why there are certain ailments that are happening in our society at the moment is because there are spiritual things that have not been resolved in the ways of our people. In the ways that those things have not been resolved means that we are continuously spiritually ailing. Spiritual ailment doesn't end in the spirit. It manifests into the physical. It manifests into your energy, it manifests into your aura, it manifests into your physical wellness. When there is spiritual imbalance, we pick it up. That is a difficult thing for the clinical setting to take into account or understand, because the clinical setting primarily looks at the biomedical representation and aspect of the body. When I come in with now a psycho-spiritual understanding of these are the realities that sit with our young people. Now, not only are we lost in our identity within our nervous systems, but we also lost in our identity because our elders are afraid to pass down this information to us because of the spiritual trauma that has been incurred. In that spiritual trauma being incurred, the only time that the information yamasiko gets passed down to us, yezinto zikamoya gets passed down to us, is when it's a life and death situation. Because manje umntwana uselele esibhedlela and udinga ukuyothwasa. You know what I mean? Because manje there's a certain spiritual ceremony that's supposed to be done at home to be able to keep the peace, the good fortune, the spiritual fortitude of the family, but that's no longer being practiced because it's been lost to colonial oppression. So we sit in our lineages with a lot more ailments in our spiritual legacies that then come up for us when we are trying to make something of ourselves in the world.
Yo. That's deep. What a critical conversation on Africa Day, speaking about who we are. And when the Vice Chancellor and Principal started this conversation during a keynote address, said we need to become the best versions of ourselves. And discussions and conversations of this nature become very critical. Gogo, you are touching on very important components, but I'm picking up healing in the components that you're talking about and the importance thereof. Is it really possible to gravitate towards healing and experience the totality of well-being?
Look, it's possible. I'm not going to say that it's not impossible, but it's an egregious task. On the basis of the fact that a decolonial framework is a master's tool, okay? A decolonial framework says the master gets to control the manner in which the decolonization happens. What we are needing to do as Africans is re-indigenize ourselves. Then we can begin to look at healing within our own social constructs. We have different social constructs regarding wellness. And when we think about those social constructs per clan, per tribe, per culture, per province, etc., there are fundamentally important things that are supposed to come out of bodies of information that should be passed down, right? But now we are sitting in a place where I'm young, but I'm considered an elder. Traditional healers have become the elders of our now nation because the elders have struggled with metabolizing that trauma, right? Now, so healing looks like, what does it look like as Black nations to go back to how we used to resolve through trauma and begin to have those conversations again? What does Mbizo look like amongst the Zulu people, the Sotho people, the Xhosa people, the Pedi people? What does Mbizo look like to say we are having an intergenerational gap in knowledge? And one of the ways in which we can begin to address that intergenerational gap in knowledge is how do we heal our nervous systems? We have our ways of healing our nervous systems, because once your nervous system is stuck in a stress response, you are consistently responding to things from that stress response. Now you are either in fight, flight, freeze, or fawn mode, right? And once your nervous system has adapted to either one of these stress responses, what your body does is it shuts down and it protects you to the extent that you can have limited cognitive abilities. So at that point, sometimes when our elders, for instance, are needing to engage these identities, they can have a cognitive shutdown when it comes to passing down this knowledge, because their nervous system just goes zoop, complete freeze, complete paralysis. So what does it look like to be able to go back in history and think about how do we heal those elders so that we are then healed, or we heal backwards, back to them, from the young people back to them, but in the manners in which we knew are the ways to heal, because our healing doesn't only affect our body, it affects your mind, your heart, your body, your spirit, your soul. These are 5 components of human existence, right? And these things are connected to so many things. It's connected to family, it's connected to belief systems, it's connected to personality models, it's connected to, for us in African spirituality, it's connected to healing the earth, for instance, because not only do I walk with my ancestral spirits and the gifts that I walk with, but I also walk with the power to be able to connect to nature and use the strength in the spirits of nature to be able to effect and influence healing. Now, because we are sitting at a disconnect with land dispossession, we are unable to connect into the strength and the power that that land would give us unless it is cordoned off as a heritage site or reserved. But even if it is reserved, it's also reserved in ways that don't allow us access as healers, for instance. Doesn't allow us access, and some of those spaces are sacred lands for us. What does it look like to go and cleanse those sacred lands? Because what happens is those sacred lands are not cleansed, for instance. Everybody that steps on that land is going to be affected by the residual energy of whatever violence or trauma took place on that land.
Sure. Kwezi, you might want to bring Prof in, but I just want to our audience here, if as we move with the conversation, something comes to mind and you have a question, just raise your hand. There are roaming mics on the floor, about 4 mics. The team will identify you, and then you will be given an opportunity to speak. Kwezi, back to you.
Thank you so much for that. Prof, let's talk about the emotional side of things. You know, many students are navigating the realities, such as financial pressures, loneliness, academic anxiety, and all of that. In your view, what are the most overlooked dimensions of student well-being?
I think there's a couple of things that are overlooked. You know, just tailing on what Go said, to say, what happens if, you know, I'm coming from the health sciences. Now, what happens to a medical student or any listening student or whatever who goes into a clinical facility and experience death? Because that's what they would do. They would experience it in some part of their training. What we really never talk about is how do we train them to see those and handle them in a way that they will understand best. We cannot like go into the pathway that we all know to say, you know, in a hospital, the person dies, we close the eyes, we clean them up, we wrap them in a white sheet, and yeah, we pass. But then this student is at some point going to be confronted with what the family might want. And we're not ready. We don't prepare them for that. We don't prepare our students to be emotionally capable of handling things that are out of their own normality, right? So I think once you start thinking about what are the issues
Yeah.
that we need to be thinking about in higher education space beyond the anxiety? We need to ask the question, what causes those anxiety? What are the things that we need to be thinking about? We need to be thinking of, are we inclusive in our way of thinking relationship of well-being and one's culture and tradition? And I think one of the things that we talk about, we teach theories a lot. One of the theories that we talk about is Vygotsky's theory, which talks about learning taking place within the environment, within the being, as part of that. But what we don't do and we don't discuss enough is, what is the environment? Is it the environment because it is the university environment, or is the environment within which the students find themselves? One, challenging. Secondly, something new to them, particularly if they are, one, come from rural areas, two, first generation graduate with expectations. So in my view, when we talk about inclusiveness in terms of the pathways that we need to think of and how we would support students towards a well-being, yes, it's not only about sending students to counseling. They can go to counseling. In fact, I've got a view that counseling shouldn't be spoken about counseling. It's a mental health term that it makes people feel as if, it stigmatizes people as if you are sick.
Yeah.
It makes you feel like you are mentally not well. But it's not necessarily the only issue around mental health. Mental health is a core, which is actually the response to what the person has been experiencing. Therefore, we should, in addition of looking into the anxieties and the stress and everything that we can say it impact or imposes unwell or negativity on the well-being of a person, we need to be starting to think on what does this student really look like? And can we include their well-being from a cultural aspect? We don't talk about those things in our books. We don't even prepare them that they should handle them when they meet them. And that creates stress to the student. That is where the mental health issues come in. That is where when the finances, we talk about the finance, we talk about all those type of things. But do we ever stop and think, when we talk about finances, for example, we have students, a lot of our students are on NSFAS. And we hear tales of students not buying books, students always struggling not buying food. But have you considered that this student, because NSFAS students, most of them, they come from family where they were SASA first. Then from SASA, they get captured within the NSFAS system. Now, one student once said to me, with my NSFAS money, because I was the one who was kind of like my SASA money was the breadwinner money at home, right? And now I come to university, it means my mother or my parents no longer get that 500 because now I'm older. Therefore, I'm going to take part of my NSFAS and use it in that space. That is a contributory factor to not being well, right? It is no longer about just the finance of paying the fees. It's about the finance of survival, because NSFAS become my shared community space with my family. So those are the type of things when within the higher education we focus on well-being as the one entity, mainly the mental health that is due to all these barriers, but we miss that part in terms of the socialness of how as African people we share even the least of what we have.
Sure.
Yeah, we may give them a round of applause collectively. Because when you look at it in the African context, and when we talk about the issue of individualism really doesn't exist much. It's about the collective, the community. And it is those principles and ethics and morals that we grow up with that follow us into university. That if I do have this, I've got to share with my family. But there are realities in higher education. There are needs that I need to take care of in higher education. And one would wonder, why do I have funding, NSFAS, but I still, am not living up to, I'm experiencing the shortfall. And maybe there are questions that our panelists have, because they are just here to trigger some questions, inputs from the floor. If there are any, please do feel free to raise your hand, because we don't want to leave you behind in this conversation. We want to take this conversation forward, but we want to make sure that we take this conversation forward with you. We are talking about student well-being in higher education, in an African university, and there are lived realities that our students are confronting. If I was a res student, I would ask a very critical question around African spirituality within the residence spaces, because we are talking about the environment. And perhaps the question would be, have we gotten to, or what are the ways in which we can get to the point where we are able to create an enabling environment for our students to experience total well-being in the midst of existing norms and standards, occupational health and safety, that balance. How do we strike the balance, Gogo, between African spirituality in the environments we exist in while ensuring safety? Are there any practical ways, even if it's one, that as the University of the Free State we can take as you leave to come back?
Okay, so what I've been doing with my students at UCT is, for instance, ukuchisa, very controversial topic, ikesana. Yo, ndidinwe. Into yochisa impepho, enye into, it's got cultural significance differently to all of us per clan and tribe that we come from. But fundamentally, we need that basic connection. It's like the same as praying for Christians, right? Maspahla, sisebenzisa our candles, our mpepho, and the manner in which I've been able to cordon off the safety hazard issue with my students is the fact that they are now mpepho incense sticks, which do not have as much smoke as mpepho does. Or rather, if they really need the actual raw herb, to burn very little of it at a time so that it doesn't generate a lot of smoke, and to open all of your windows while you are impepho and your candles. The other controversial topic in res spaces is ancestral trances. Ooh. Ancestral trances have been it's such a difficult phenomena and reality to mediate, because it's like energetic frequency, right? Like audio has a frequency and it moves from here to there, and we start reacting to it physically. It's got the same effect when somebody goes into an ancestral trance. There's a certain frequency that that person is emanating at that point, and it can affect other students who have no exposure to African spirituality on that level. Some of us come from families, sinamagqirha ekhaya, kunezangoma, sijwayele imgidi, beating the drums, siyagida, siyaxhensa, sibetha izlawa, amagobongo kumandi. But some of us don't. And although we come from families that have not exposed us to those things, we still carry the very real spiritual and genetic reality of whatever calling could be running through that family. So if I am an initiate or a sangoma, and I am a student at res, nginyukelwe yidlozi, the reality is that my spiritual trance could affect the next student, which then causes the next student psycho-spiritual stress because they have no exposure to any of those things. So there's needing to be a training for wardens, sub-wardens, frontline responders when it comes to things like ancestral trances, because each kind of trance is different. There is a trance that is aligned to uqamaku kwaXhosa. There is a trance that is aligned to uthokoza in Simbebomvu, the red beads. And the black beads. There is a trance associated with just your family lineage's ancestors coming up to give you a message without any specific ancestral calling over your life. Maybe a spiritual gift, right? And you happen to be accessible to them as the ancestors. So now it can get very uncomfortable for other students to the point that it infringes on their, I don't want to call it constitutional right, but the students feel uncomfortable about it. It feels spiritually violating, like an invasion, to now be having a physical response to someone else's ancestral trance. So needing to educate res spaces about the reality of what it means to live with people in their space that practice African spirituality. The reality of when incenses burn, it's uncomfortable for some students, and it can trigger spiritual awakening or spiritual activation in other students. So there needs to be disclosure. If there can be a res intake form where students can disclose the fact that they come from an African spiritual background, and these are the practices in which they need to be able to continue their wellness trajectory throughout their academic career. And then there be education as well to the rest of the students to let them know that, listen, you will be living with a student like this in your res. Sometimes you're going to smell the residue of candles or rimpepo. Sometimes there will be a very loud noise and screaming. Sometimes, and making them understand that it's not anything that is demonic or wrong. Because most of us have been raised in Catholic and Christian churches to believe that once somebody goes into an ancestral trance, there is demonic energy attached to it. So sometimes it is demonic energy, sometimes it is not. But in African spirituality, we're able to ascertain in the manner in which the trance happens, the difference between it being an evil spirit, spiritual warfare, and an ancestral spirit that has come up to speak. So education, it's a big thing. And perhaps giving students a choice. And saying to them, there are students that practice African spirituality in this race. Are you comfortable living with students that practice African spirituality, so that we are not consistently dealing with this clash between the belief systems and realities?
Let me thank you. I'm going to take 2 questions from the floor. And then we'll continue with the conversation. If you have a mic, it means you can speak. Yes, please go on.
This one is a bit personal because I can somehow relate, as I started started accepting my gift when I was doing my 2nd year here in the University of the Free State, and I used to stay at a residence called House Vergertmeni, whereby some of my housemates, when I would get in trance, they wouldn't know how to handle me, and I knew what to do, which required burning impepo and candles, of which it's restricted here at the University of the Free State for those staying on campus. And I did my research on how and why. And then I understood that I might burn my candles, then they fall, then they burn the entire residence. Then I respected and acknowledged the given restrictions. But now, since we are now basically emphasizing inclusivity, truly speaking, I felt like I'm not welcomed. Truly speaking, I felt like I'm now the problem in the building, because even my housemates will try to comfort me. Vanessa Msiza used to be my housemate. She would comfort me, and luckily my room would always be near hers. She will try to comfort me, although she doesn't have the knowledge about it. But then now, why do I have to seek for comfort from the others, where else I'm also a human being? And like I've said, I arrived here normal like everyone, and then along the way, I encountered the gift. I had to answer the calling. Since it's my calling, no one else can answer the call except for me. So now my question is, while we're still waiting for a process that's going to benefit each and every Govsi here at the University of the Free State, which advice would you grant a student? Maybe, for instance, right now I'm no longer staying on campus because I felt like I should leave but then for those who are still staying on campus, what advice would you say they could do? Because I would bend paper in order for me to be able to study. And trust me, I excelled. And
Yes. Yes. Yes.
so now, it required me to travel back at home in order to go and talk to my people. Because here, it's unacceptable. And then, Ikesh, they don't tolerate that. So I'll have to go every Friday, then come back. I'm an NSFAS student, by the way. So that on its own, it cost me to use the money I should have used for my groceries and toiletries. So now, for those at least who are still here on campus, what should they do perhaps that would accommodate everyone? Thank you.
Maybe let's take Mrs. Pate's Thank you for the question. We've noted that question, and Ugogo as well as the Prof are going to answer the two questions at the same time. So I'm going to grant you an opportunity, and if we could cut a little bit on the preface so that we save on time and we can have more people asking questions. Over to you.
Aukanya. Hello everyone. My question will be very, very short. It's about the well-being. I heard you talking about the well-being, how students suffer and everything. So what I've realized is that most of the students, we come from backgrounds that will humble if we tell the story. My question to you is, if you see, you're a student, you notice that someone is struggling. Prof, I've touched on something, example, students going to pubs, drinking alcohol, getting into dangerous situations. How will you take that as a student that have a knowledge to share with them, be there for the student without even offending them? How will you do that? Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for the questions. And when we gravitate towards the end, I'm going to challenge you to also make some proposals to say, as a student, this is what I want to see in the university. Because you know what we've done here? We've brought the Executive Director of Student Affairs, Sport, Arts and Culture. We brought the Vice Chancellor and Principal of the university so that they also get to hear what is it that the VC always speak about our student. What is it that our student wants to see in the university for them to thrive? Maybe I'll allow you to respond to the two questions.
Okay. Thobela ngwanaka. The other ways in which I've dealt with students needing to de-escalate their spiritual activations with impepo and candles is to have them do it outside. So when you are having your issue, is to try to take your candles and your impepo and to go outside. At night, you can go with another student, a fellow student, and do your impepo and your candle outside. But otherwise, during the day, you can go outside into nature. Like I said earlier, we're not only connected to our ancestral spirits, but we're also connected to the nature spirits. So you are able to utilize the strength of nature to your advantage, which is being able to then connect with your ancestors through the natural spirits. And that should be able to assist you so that you don't constantly have to travel back home to speak to Amakehla. You can also, we can also develop public shrines, although it's controversial to develop public shrines, but to develop public shrines, one of the UCT reses do have a room allocated for students to be able to go and phahla specifically. So that is a room that is also spiritually taken care of in specific ways. It is cleansed in specific ways. It is spiritually nurtured and fortified in certain ways. We can also do that by having public shrines outside for students to be able to utilize, and those shrines would be taken care of according to spiritual protocols. That is one way in which we've been able to utilize the outside spaces so that safety hazard issues are not such a problem.
Thank you. I think the second one is quite difficult. It's difficult in the sense he's asking what does he has to do to stop other people from drinking. From addition, I don't know. But I think from a perspective, and this is just an opinion, because to be quite honest, as much as the VCP was saying to people, they have to read, they have to study, they have to pass. It is their responsibility. So basically, each one of us has a responsibility towards us and our success in a way. Everything else around us are facilitators that could get us to a certain point, but we need to take responsibility of who we are. So I don't think it's going to be easy. You could have a best friend that you can talk to and say, hey, don't go to the Shebeen and Mjolo Wanyisa, don't do that, right? So those are the conversations that you could have with your friends. And in terms of trying to make sure that we don't want to be, what do you call it? We don't want to be nurturing alcoholism as an issue. We can't do that. As Academia University, a space where we want to nurture strategic thinking. We want to nurture what we are talking about in terms of well-being with regards to all the concepts of things that makes you happy. The question becomes, are you happy when you are an alcoholic? It comes with regrets. There's a word. I don't think addicts are happy, even if you can say yes at the back there, I hate you. But because the first thing, you don't even have money. What money are you using to buy alcohol? Because that's supposed to be helping you. But on a serious note, I think it is.
Let's settle down.
I think on a serious note, it's a conversation that as young people, in your groups, in your grouping that you want to identify with to give you access to good education. In those groups, when you get to university, you kind of like form groups, you form friendships. And that is a space Papa, that we can take to say, listen, friend, this is the path I think we should to take to be able to get where we want to do. We should remind each other that you come from humble beginnings, as you say, and messing up your chance of being the first graduate, the one who might be securing the family's well-being in totality. Once you get into those spaces, the gambling, the alcohol, the everyday out, we don't say student don't go out, go. It's nice to be a student, it's nice to be young, but you need to be limiting to yourself and have self-discretionary to say, this is where I stop and this is where I go. Because by doing things out of, or things that excessively, you are actually excluding yourself. While we are talking about inclusivity, once you start doing things that are out of bound, that are going to get you in more trouble than what is supposed to be, then you are excluding yourself from the very inclusiveness that we want to bring you in. Therefore, it is important to think of what constitutes within what you want to do as norms. And ask yourself the question, is it a wise move? Is it a move that will actually enhance me being a happy, fulfilled, content person? Because that's what well-being is all about. It's about being content. It's about being happy with the space, whichever type of it, you don't have to be rich to be happy. But if you are content with the little that you have and you find ways in using them wisely, then that enhances your well-being. Rather than you know that you are going to go to the groups with the men's and the girls, and tomorrow we are in trouble, and therefore your life is also coming to a standstill. So in trying to answer what do you do, I think it is having those conversations with the people that you call friends, and those that you see, they might be heading towards the wrong direction and staying with you in a way. I think those, and just highlighting the danger of excluding themselves from what we would want students to become.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Prof. Thank you. Thank you, Prof. I'm going to allow you Gogo, but I just want to take, there is a question from the floor, one question from the floor, and then in responding to the question, you might start off, yes, from where Prof left off.
Greetings, everyone. For the sake of time, I greet everyone according to the chronological order, and allow me to say all protocols are observed. My name is Vanessa Msiza, and I'm the CSRC on-campus residence council, representing all the 21 on-campus residences. My question to you, Gogo, is that how can the institution give support to our residence leaders? Our residence leaders usually are the first people to receive the call when there's an emergency in the residence, and they are the people that bear with all the pain and the sufferings that a certain student is going through. We usually receive complaints like, I was trying to assist the student, and the student that was in the act of the spirituality pushed me, and then I fell into the wall, such things. So I just want to understand as to how can the institution better assist our leaders in residences in ensuring that Libona as well, their mental health is also okay, because they are, number one, they are not trained on how to handle such issues in residences. No one ever trains them, and no one ever comes back to ask, how are you guys doing? How do you guys handle such emergencies in your residences? So how can the institution itself offer support to our students? Because in as much as we can say that we can call one student that has the same calling in the residence, but as you also mentioned yourself, that sometimes the calling of someone else can affect the same person that has the same calling, and some students, sometimes they choose to distance themselves and say, I won't be able to assist this time because this person is dragging my energy or whatever, the thingy. So how can we better assist assist our leaders in residences as the first respondents to all the emergencies in residences with regard to African spirituality calling. Thank you.
Yes, maybe I will allow you to build upon where Prof left off, and then you can also respond to the question. Thank you, Coco.
Okay, so the addiction question. We have wellness drives at the university I'm working at. During wellness drive weeks, we have informants that come in to speak about things like depression, anxiety, addiction, etc. They speak on the radio. They will come in and they will do talks during the wellness drive for people to be able to understand what to look out for. So what our wellness is doing, it also has Wellness Wednesdays, which means coming in to come and we have what? We have SWS peers, which are student wellness peers, right? And then what we would do is that those peers get educated about how do you teach regarding addiction, for instance. How do you educate regarding addiction? So that when there are gatherings regarding things like addiction, educational gatherings, you can take your friends there so they can hear for themselves. You understand? So that they get there, they get to understand what constitutes addiction. What is the cause of addiction? Because usually there's an underlying issue where addiction is involved. If it's gambling, poverty could be an underlying issue. Self-esteem could be an underlying issue. If it's alcohol, if it's drugs, if it's sex addiction, if it's whatever, it's usually because there's something that person's psyche is escaping through a dopamine rush that they are getting by engaging that addiction, that addictive substance that they are using or outlets that they are using. So to be able to teach what constitutes addiction and what are the causes of addiction, then you are able to look into what's going on in my friend's life. Do you know what I mean? You're able to pick up, would say, oh no, there's an unresolved maybe emotional issue here, or there's a poverty issue here. And then you begin to speak about the psychosocial support services that they can reach out to, like Gamblers Anonymous, Narcotics Anonymous, SADAC speaks to people. There are boards that restrict people from being able to register for gambling, for instance. So we give them the information regarding those psychosocial services of also taking the responsibility of engaging their addiction and taking responsibility for it themselves. So you send them to wellness. Send them to wellness, you know, and be like, I noticed that A, B, and C is happening in your life, and I noticed that when I was at a talk, this information came up regarding addiction, and usually the underlying issues for somebody doing something as frequently as you are connotes addiction. And then you get to then say, there are wellness practitioners that can help you understand what it is that's causing you to engage addiction that way. Yeah? So that also means we need to educate student wellness. We need to educate about addiction, etc. The other question about student leaders and reses. At UCT, what I've been doing is gathering wardens and sub-wardens. And I would specifically have training with them about responding to ancestral callings and trances. So I would give them different scenarios regarding the kind of trances that would come up or the spiritual activations that would come up, what they would look like, and how to approach them so that they can also then protect themselves. You understand? And I also try to identify who are the people in those wardens or sub-wardens and in those reses who are exposed to African spirituality that can then get concessions to become first-line responders. Yeah?
Yeah.
Prof, so many students have raised the realities that they go through, especially living on campus. You know, so if we were to meet here in the next 3 to 5 years, what do you think what are the pathways that you would want to see for you to be able to say, yeah, we've made a shift towards holistic well-being for students? What frameworks, what pathways do you want to see instilled for you to be able to say, okay, now we're at a point where we're progressive?
I'm going to, I think I had that thing. What about that? Sorry. Okay. I think one of the things that I would want to see moving forward is where student feels like they belong. Yeah. I think that is the first thing. When student feels like they belong, when they are safe within the space they are in a university and are able to express themselves like they are now. I think we are taking a road where students are able to talk about spirituality free from being fear of stigma. That is going the right direction. It means these conversations they start with, just saying that there is something happening. That is the first thing. The second thing I think I would want to see, and I think we would say we would have done, we talk about, we don't talk much, and even today we didn't talk much about the existence of technology and where we're going with it, right? And whether each and every student who walk into the University of the Free State is able to confidently say that I can use technologies that are available. Right? We talk about everybody has a cell phone, but how many of the people who own smartphones know how to use all the features in that smartphone? Those smartphones are much smarter than the people who carry them. So if we look into a point where students and staff, maybe we end up having our lessons in spaces or on the tools that students have, that they are able to access them without having to spend a cent on them. That will be an interesting pathway, not just using a phone for a phone call, but being used also as a tool of teaching and learning for the student. I think what I would also want to see is where the education staff, the lecturers and everybody who deals with students are also immersed in understanding the technology and meeting our generation that is literally living on the phone. I mean, if you look into what is happening right now, a 3-year-old uses a phone. Imagine when that 3-year-old comes to university, right? And they meet me who don't even know how to use Cobalt. Or when I talk about Cobalt, people don't know what Cobalt is. So it means it is when we get to a point where every staff and every student is comfortable to use tools that will increase their learning and strengthen their capability to success. That would be one of the things that we would have made headways as a university if we have provided those skills for both our groups of people. And also, looking into the whole issue of the culture and traditions that we are talking about, where we get to a point where when we look into a curriculum of the University of the Free State, there is aspects of spirituality that talks to it. When we look into our modules, there is something that really orientate not only African students, because all the students in this university are going to meet people outside anyway. So sharing those diversities with other groupings, understanding that we are all going to come into contact with each other at some point. And if we can get a 5-year, by 5 years, even if you get a white medical student, able to say, I understand when somebody is going into a trance. What does that look like, right? And I will be able to assist. So if we're moving towards those pathways of inclusivity that are just beyond, maybe just going back, one of the things that I've picked up and we don't talk about a lot, it is the students in the middle, the missing middle students. We never talk about them much, right? And those missing middle students also have their own spaces in university, because when we do plan for things, a lot of times we plan to the NSFAS students, but we don't talk about the student of a teacher who does not earn over 600,000. And the mother is not only the mother to her, but is a mother to the cousin's child and the sisters, whoever, and all those type of things. You can imagine this child who knows that their mother is a professional or is expected to live a better life, but knows that there are circumstances at home are not as good as they're supposed to be. So if we are able to not only look at the other groupings, but also inclusively and intentionally look into this group so that we don't lose them. Because that is where the suicides happen. The suicide most of the time doesn't happen with what we call the student from humble beginnings. Most of the time the suicide happens amongst students who are middle class because of they cannot talk of their issues as compared to the others. So if I have to see the University of Free State that also have spaces or that also have financing for that type of student, then I will say we are inclusive. We have looked into everybody in totality.
Wow. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Gogo, ndiza kunika nje amazwi 2 minutes to give us your concluding remarks on this topic before we send you back to Cape Town, with the hope that we will invite you again. And when we invite you again, we hope that you will come and stay with us. 2 minutes.
When we look into the aspects of African identity, the one thing we all need is unconscious bias training. To understand what immediately shocks us and what immediately sends us into a withdrawal when something different to what we know is presented before us. Because it's partly compassionate leadership in community, but it's also self-leadership. Because as much as you want to be accepted amongst everybody else also wants to be accepted by you. But if you're not making the effort to figure out the best way to support that person, including their belief systems, even if you feel like you shouldn't be engaging, we also need to understand that one day you may be in the crisis that is relating to your belief system, for instance, and you may be needing support from someone who's not necessarily aligned to your belief system. So we need to figure out and understand, what does unconscious bias training look like, and what does it look like? I mean, I've been working with grade 10s in Cape Town who are part of the Cape Town Interfaith Initiative, all kinds of faiths, young people, 16 years old, learning to be leaders that are compassionate to different forms of belief systems, and learning that when my classmate is in a spiritual crisis, I know what I need to do for them, and it doesn't take away anything from my belief system or from my humanity.
Thank you so much.
And now, Prof. Petlu, what would your concluding remarks be?
I actually had to write it down because I knew you were going to ask me conclusion remarks. So I actually thought about it, and I said, for the broader university student population, especially for the student from rural areas, the first generation student coming in, well-being is inseparable from material security, from academic belonging, from linguistic inclusions, and institutional visibility. You can't separate them, right? And innovative pathways do not require expensive new buildings. You don't have to build another university. They require proactive outreach. We shouldn't wait for students to fall, right? They require cultural responsiveness of care. when we talk about counseling, it's not a one-size-fits-all. We need to be thinking about how we respond to people. We shouldn't only think of adding services while the barriers are still intact. So as we think, what is it that we are going to do, we should remove what are those things that are barriers, because we can't expect different results while we're doing the same thing. And when a rural first generation student can find a quiet place to study, ask questions in their home language without shame, and see someone like themselves succeeding, that is where we are going to say we are inclusive. And that is my end of the story.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Prof. Thank you. Thank you. And it is at this stage that I'm going to really, firstly, thank you, Prof. I think in starting the conversation for sharing with us some of the diameters of well-being, but also for defining what well-being really means. And we appreciate that. And you've also touched on the responsible use of digital technology. The device that I'm using should not be smarter than me. Thank you so much. Let's give Prof a round of applause. Gogo, thank you for, I think, for inviting us to re-indigenize ourselves, but also for sharing so openly your views on African spirituality. But your experience as well has come in handy in this conversation. We appreciate the nuggets of wisdom that you've shared with us, and we hope that you will partner with us in implementing some of the nuggets that you've shared here with us today. A round of applause for Prof. And before we conclude the program, I'm going to invite the Vice Chancellor and Principal, as well as the Executive Director of Student Affairs, Sport, Arts and Culture, to present gifts to our panelists. Were they not amazing? You may just go to the floor. Yes, thank you, thank you. Siyabonga kakhulu gogo. Siyabulela gogo. You can just go ahead. Thank you, Prof. Thanks,
You're
Iti.
most welcome.
Thanks, Iti.
Thank you so much, Dr. Tlaisho.
And if we could just settle a little bit, we are drawing the program to a close, but I do know that Kwezi has something for us just at the end. I'm just going to do my part and leave the stage. I just want to appreciate, firstly, you, Kwezi. I think you did a stellar job. You did a great work. And I must say, without bragging, that Kwezi has an association that she registered with the Student Governance Office. She's running a TV. She's our TV presenter. Kwezi, you can see it. And let me appreciate the Vice Chancellor and Principal at the beginning of this program for giving us a keynote address that was so grounded in the realities of the institution, but also for reaffirming the commitment of the university executive under your leadership to make sure that no deserving and eligible student is denied their right for access to education. We really thank you for your commitment towards responsible societal futures. A round of applause for the VC. ED, in Student Affairs, Sport, Arts and Culture, you challenge us each and every day to create spaces like this. But you don't only want us to create these spaces, you create them with us. We appreciate you for creating the space where we could reflect really and innovate. We really, really appreciate you. Please do continue creating spaces like this. And the ED said, I must invite you to the Global Wellbeing Summit because these conversations are a lead up to the summit on the 7th and the 10th of July 2026, where the Vice Chancellor and Principal on the 7th will also be present at the summit. A round of applause for the ED. I know I'm not going to get an opportunity to come back here and thank the performance that will be rendered at the end, but I do want to appreciate the Student Governance Office at the Bloom campus, one, for creating a space where students can be themselves and they can register and have their own small pockets of belonging. Because the two performances that were rendered here are by student associations that are registered under student governance. And I do want to appreciate also Duma for arranging the three performances for us. Let's give them a round of applause. Colleagues, I must appreciate the organizing committee for the excellent work. Look at the deco that they've put together. I see Africa just behind me. They did an excellent work. So there was a team behind the scenes. There was just too many for me to mention all of them, because there are other colleagues who kept coming in here and there in between, giving ideas on how this can look just as it looks like. And I do want to appreciate the LOC. I want to appreciate all the service providers that are here who made sure that the session is recorded, the sound, the quality sound, the well coordination, the sign language interpreter, for the inclusivity. Colleagues, let's give all of them a round of applause. I'm going to pack my bags and leave Kwezi, and Kwezi will tell you what will happen next. But what I can tell you so that I become famous is that just at the end, once Kwezi is done with her part of the program, please be sure to leave nicely and quietly from the back. You will be served your dinner on my left. Yes. And that is well-being. Let's settle down a little bit. In doing so, ichokwethini man.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much. You have been an amazing audience. And at this time, I would like to call upon the Botswana to give us a performance. Thank you. Thank you so much to the Botswana Ria Leboga. May we kindly request that students first. May we kindly request that students allow the executive to leave first. Thereafter, students may also begin exiting through the front exits in a very orderly manner. Thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your evening, ladies and gentlemen.